Life 8.3 million years ago. Ancient forest dwellers facing a changing climate. A cinematic, prehistoric survival epic. They weren't human yet, but they fought to become us. The story begins in motion, with survival. The morning heat had barely begun to rise when the Australopithecus band was already in motion, scrambling through the thinning forest, their limbs slick with sweat, their breaths sharp with urgency. They moved low, weaving between exposed roots and dying brush. Ahead of them, their matriarch, a broad-shouldered female with a graying crest, hurried forward, one hand gripping a half-rotten fruit cluster while her eyes scanned the distance. Behind her, a juvenile stumbled. The matriarch snapped back a sharp guttural click, not a word, but a command carved from instinct. The young one corrected its pace instantly. The forest around them was wrong. It had been changing for seasons, but today the crisis sharpened into a point. The fruit trees at the heart of their feeding territory were empty. This was why they moved now, fast, tense, and hungry. The small band of 12 forest dwellers was deep into a foraging run, pushing farther than they had dared in many moons. Their old world, dense trees, dependable fruit, shaded floors, was thinning into a widening savanna, an unfamiliar expanse of open heat and predatory sightlines. Survival demanded adaptation, and adaptation demanded risk. Their foraging run was not a leisurely search. It was a race against hunger. But as they reached the final ridge overlooking a familiar grove, they froze. The trees were stripped. Broken branches, trampled undergrowth, fallen unripe fruits littered the soil like shattered eggs. Another hominid band had beaten them here. The matriarch lifted her chin, nostrils flaring. She recognized the musk, sharp, oily, territorial, the scent of a larger, aggressive rival group that sometimes followed them at a distance. Her chest vibrated with a low warning. The band instantly tightened into a cluster, their bodies forming a protective ring around the smallest juveniles. The forest was no longer home. It was becoming a battleground. And still, they pressed forward. Hunger pushed them on. The savanna opens, and danger with it. The forest edge broke abruptly into a golden grassland shimmering under the sun. The transition was shocking, trees giving way to open wind, unfiltered heat, sweeping grass that hid everything and revealed nothing. The matriarch led them along a narrow game path. They moved cautiously, for on the savanna, eyes were everywhere, and not all belonged to prey. A trio of guinea fowls scattered at their approach. A grazing antelope lifted its head, ears twitching. But the matriarch noticed something else, an absence of birdsong, the silence of predators near. Her hand rose. The band halted instantly. Wind bent the tall grass. A faint tremor vibrated through the soil, subtle but unmistakable. Weight shifting, something large adjusting its body. A shadow moved. The matriarch's pupils flared. A Machai reditos, the saber-toothed cat of their age, crouched in the grass. Its golden pelt blended into the landscape, but its amber eyes caught the light. The band froze. The Machai reditos did not lunge. It waited. It was assessing. A juvenile whimpered. The cat's ears flicked toward the sound. The matriarch reacted instantly, slamming her palm against a cracked fallen branch. The sound echoed sharply across the savanna, startling the juveniles into silence and drawing the predator's gaze toward her instead. She puffed her chest wide, raising her arms high, shaking the branch, a bluffing display, instinctive, yet ancient. The Machai reditos considered. It blinked, and then, disinterested, it melted back into the grass with slow, deliberate stealth. The band stayed frozen until the grass lay still again. Then the matriarch urged them forward. The first danger had passed, but not the last. A new discovery and the first twist. By midday, the heat became brutal. The band's panting grew ragged. Their search had yielded only a handful of bitter roots and dry pods. But then, near a cluster of rocks, the youngest female spotted something, a glint of red beneath a thorny shrub. Berries. The band surged toward them with hungry excitement, but the matriarch swept her arm wide, halting them. She knelt, sniffing the leaves. She plucked a single berry, rolling it between her fingers. These bushes appeared rarely in the forest, but here, where the land dried and the shade thinned, they were spreading. The matriarch pressed the berry to her tongue cautiously. It was sour, edible, but only in small amounts. She gestured permission. The band ate carefully, one berry at a time. And then a sharp snap cracked behind the rocks. Every head jerked toward the sound. A shape rose. Not predator, not prey. Another hominid, one of the rival forest band, stepped into view. A broad male with long scarred arms and darkened face. He was not alone. Two more approached from the grass, fanning out. Their posture was stiff, territorial. Their chest hair bristled. The matriarch rose slowly, her shoulders expanding, chin high. Her band clustered behind her. This was not a chance meeting. The rival band had tracked them. The male approached, snatching the remaining berries from the bush, crushing some in his teeth, letting the juice drip down his chin in an unmistakable message. The matriarch did not retreat. She held her ground, eyes locked on his. He stepped closer. Too close. The savanna air thickened with the impending violence of two ancient bloodlines. But then, a distant rumble rolled through the ground. The entire savanna trembled. Dust drifted from the rocky slope. Every creature, dominant or afraid, fell silent. Then came the second twist. A stampede rising over the horizon in a thunder of hooves. Zebras, antelope, hogs, all sprinting wildly, fleeing from something enormous. The rival male hesitated. The matriarch reacted first, shoving her band toward the rocks for shelter. The rival band scrambled back, abandoning their show of dominance. The ground shook harder. The stampede barreled into view, a tidal wave of muscle and panic. The Australopithecus clung to the rocks as the first animals thundered past. Dust filled their lungs, hooves slashed the earth. The matriarch pulled a juvenile close seconds before a charging wildebeest nearly trampled it. For a long, chaotic minute, the world was only motion and dust and the deafening roar of survival. When it ended, silence dropped like a stone. The savanna lay torn, churned by hundreds of fleeing animals. Both hominid bands had survived, but the rivals were already retreating, slinking into the grass, unwilling to risk further confrontation. The matriarch watched them go. The first conflict faded, but the second was approaching. The stampede had not been random. Something had driven those herds. Something still out there. The hunt for water. The band staggered onward through savanna heat now thick with dust. The matriarch led them toward a known water source, a shallow seasonal pool nestled in a patch of clay-rich soil. But as they reached the basin, they found it cracked and dry. The pool was gone. The matriarch stamped the clay with her heel. A faint dampness seeped upward, but far too deep to reach by hand. The youngest juvenile began to cry silently. The matriarch turned to the oldest male of the group, a broad-chested elder with a deep scar across one eye. He was slow, but wise, his instincts honed by decades of survival. He raised his head, sniffing the air. Then he walked, not quickly, but with certainty. The band followed him along a trail of hardened mud. The land sloped downward toward a cluster of boulders. And then they heard it. A faint burbling. A thread of water seeped between two rocks.
Not a river, not even a pool, but a spring, a hidden seep, cold and fresh. The band descended upon it, cupping water with curled leaves, with hands, with whatever they could form into crude vessels. For the first time since dawn, relief softened their faces. But that relief was short-lived. As the matriarch scanned the horizon, her eyes narrowed. The grass was moving, slowly, deliberately, and not with the rhythm of wind or grazing. Something stalked them. The predator returns. The Machairodon had followed the stampede, and now it followed them. Its massive head rose above the grass, sabers glinting faintly. The band froze. The predator moved with slow, deliberate calculation. It had smelled their fear, their thirst, their weakness. The matriarch swept her arms wide, ushering the juveniles behind her. The elder male retrieved a stone from the ground, a sharp-edged flake created by ancient fractures. He gripped it tightly, arm trembling with age, but determination burning in his eyes. The Machairodon lowered its body. Closer, closer. The matriarch stamped her foot, issuing a deep chest rumble. The band mirrored her movement instantly, expanding their posture, raising branches, stones, bones. The predator paused. It had faced Australopithecus bands before. They were small, weak, but dangerous when united. It considered. Then, from behind the predator, a shrill cry tore through the savanna. A second Machairodon, smaller, limping, emerged from the grass. A pair. Mating pair, hunting together. The matriarch's chest tightened. This was no longer a bluffing contest. This was death approaching from both sides. The elder male barked a guttural alarm. The band split instinctively, half climbing the boulders for height advantage, the others circling behind the matriarch. The larger sabertooth lunged first. The matriarch dodged, slamming a stone against its shoulder. The impact was small, but startling. The elder male rushed from the side, slicing his sharp flake against the cat's thigh. Blood sprayed. The predator roared in fury. The second Machairodon circled toward the juveniles. The youngest mother of the group scooped up her infant, pressing its tiny body against her chest as she scrambled up the boulders. The predator leaped, but the elder male threw himself in front of it, his stone flake raised. The impact shattered the stone. The elder fell beneath the cat's weight. The matriarch shrieked, a sound raw with grief and rage. She grabbed a heavier rock, lifting it with both hands. The predator turned toward her, and she brought the rock down with all her force. Bone cracked. The cat recoiled. The second predator, seeing its mate retreat, backed away. The wounded Machairodon limped off into the grass. The savanna fell silent. The elder male lay still. The band gathered around him. Their hands touched his fur, his scarred face, his broken weapon. A mourning rumble passed through them, a sound older than language, older than fire. They had lost one of their oldest guardians. but they had survived. For now.
The storm. Clouds gathered in the afternoon sky, dark, swollen, pulsing with distant flashes. The matriarch urged the band toward higher ground. Storms on the savanna were sudden and violent, lightning igniting dry grass into walls of flame. The band moved quickly, hugging the rocky ridge, using large leaves as makeshift shields against the rising wind. Thunder cracked. Lightning struck a lone tree in the distance. Flame erupted instantly. A firestorm began to crawl across the grassland, pushed by fierce gusts. The matriarch barked a sharp warning. The band sprinted toward a cluster of caves carved into the ridge. Rain began to fall, heavy, punishing, stinging their skin. By the time they reached the cave mouth, the firestorm and rain were colliding, steam rising in great clouds as water met flame. Inside the cave, darkness swallowed them. They pressed close, shivering not from cold, but from exhaustion and fear. The matriarch inspected each member, grooming dirt from their fur, soothing the juveniles, reassuring the nursing mothers. The storm raged outside, but within the stone walls, the band found a temporary sanctuary. The matriarch rested her forehead against the cave floor. Tonight, they would live. Tomorrow, they would search again. The dawn of renewal, the climax of survival. When morning arrived, the storm had washed the savanna clean. The burned patch still smoldered, but new scents rode the wind. Fresh grass, churned soil, the promise of regrowth. And something else. Food. A tree, struck down by lightning, had cracked open its branches, revealing clusters of ripe figs protected by its former height. The band approached it cautiously. No rival group had arrived yet. No predators stalked nearby. For the first time in many days, there was abundance. They ate slowly at first, then more eagerly, their bodies refueling after the harrowing trials. As they fed, the matriarch lifted a fallen branch, its end charred by lightning. She examined the blackened tip, sniffing it. Fire. A force both dangerous and powerful. She tapped the branch against a rock. Charred flakes fell away. She tapped again, and small ants came spilling from the hollow interior. She tasted one cautiously. Food within fire. A revelation. The band watched her, copying her movements, tapping open branches, tasting the insects inside. A new strategy, a new adaptation. A small step, but such steps, multiplied over generations, shaped the destiny of species. The final trial and the deepest bond. Just as the band settled into their feeding, a cry cut the air. The youngest juvenile had slipped from the fallen tree, tumbling onto the exposed earth. The child's ankle twisted badly, swelling fast, its cries piercing. The matriarch swept it into her arms, grooming the injured limb. She searched the ground, finding a cluster of small green leaves growing near damp soil. She chewed them into pulp, an instinctive herbal remedy, and applied the paste to the swelling. The juvenile calmed. The band gathered around, creating a protective circle. The matriarch held the injured child tight, rocking gently. Her expression softened, an ancestral tenderness that carried echoes of every mother who had lived and died before her. This was their true victory, not the finding of food, not the surviving of storms and predators, but the preservation of their young, the survival of their lineage. The ending, unity, renewal, and the seed of the future. As the sun dipped into the horizon, painting the savanna in gold, the band settled near their fallen fig tree, bellies full, bodies safe. The matriarch perched on a rock, watching her family groom one another, share fruit, cradle juveniles, rest against one another's shoulders. The forest they once knew was disappearing. The savanna would become their new world, dangerous, open, unpredictable. But they had already begun to adapt. They had faced predators, rivals, storms, hunger. They had lost one of their elders. Yet here they remained, alive, united, stronger. The wind carried the scent of distant rain. The matriarch raised her face to the breeze, and in that moment, for the first time in many moons, her breath slowed in peace. They would endure. They would continue. And through countless generations, through endless trials, through fire, stone, and time itself, their descendants would rise.